All right, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
How are we doing?
All right.
Well,
Great.
Good lunch, right?
Yeah.
Good morning session. Awesome. My name is Michelle Biesberger. I'm in the Physical Education and Health Education Department.
Joel Daring, same department.
And Ariel Rodriguez is Sport Management Recreation Department.
Our intent in this session is to allow you the opportunity to explore experiential learning in a variety of ways. So we're going to start with an activity followed by a debrief, and then Ariel and then Joel will have examples and logistics from their experiences and their courses within experiential learning. Then we'll have some time for a small group discussion where you'll be able to think about, talk about, and plan towards applying, either continuing what you're doing with experiential learning or building on that based on your experiences. We also welcome any questions throughout. We may have a few minutes at the end for Q&A as well. So starting off with the activity, our first activity is called Pipeline. Has anybody participated in Pipeline before? Excellent, awesome. So you saw that I provided everybody with a resource, right? The goal within this activity is for you to work within a group to create a pathway for you to travel from your current status in teaching and learning to improved teaching and learning. Notice that they're color-coded. So if you have green, I just showed your current status in teaching and learning and your improved teaching and learning. If you have a yellow resource, see up on the wall here, there's the yellow piece of paper, there's you sitting down below it, represented by the ping pong ball there. And your improved teaching and learning is represented by this bucket. You'll notice that there's not a straight line in your pathway from your current status to improved teaching and learning. So there's going to be some twists and turns along the way. However, you may never stop, and you may never go backwards once you've started. Because just like in your own pathway to improve teaching and learning, there's no pause or rewind button. You may only progress forward. If you stop, or if you move backwards, or heaven forbid you fall off your pathway, we'll give you another shot, it's okay, but you need to hold your group accountable and start back at your current status. What questions do you have?
How long do we have?
So you're going to have 5 minutes for both planning and implementation.
Okay.
And I'll give you a 1 minute warning when you've got 1 minute left. All right. Okay, again, notice the color of the pipeline that you were given and find your spot and go ahead and get started.
Just man down. They need that.
Good job. I'll be the cheerleader. Slowly, easy. I don't. Yeah, I think they pulled. It's hard with the.
our work here is done.
Sometimes in life you change for whatever reason.
Come on,
This is the new you. It might be more difficult. It might be
All right.
Do it again.
Let's go.
All right.
Tell them Amy. I promise.
I'm pretty fast. Perhaps.
All right.
It's a little faster.
Yes.
Yeah, I think
It's
it's
seven.
not, yeah. Okay.
Yes.
So very, very shallow angle.
That's confirmation over there. Okay.
Ooh, around the, you can hang on to your resources for now. That's going to be helpful to me to see if you have the green or the yellow in your hand. Oh, thank you for cleaning up for us. Ooh, out a little out of process. So thinking about that experience, can you describe what happened within your group?
We were all fairly receptive to the initial idea. So we went with that and just started experimenting. And when it actually moved, we're getting obviously some very fast life experience. But we were all trying to work with each other. So yeah.
Somebody created a plan.
And so it was positive, a lot of positive energy.
Okay. A lot of positive energy and support. Somebody created a plan. You attempted to implement that plan. Tell me about that. As you tried to implement the plan that someone created, what happened?
Came up with additional suggestions as things weren't working. So it was very team oriented. It wasn't somebody was like the boss and everybody else just said that it was.
So there were suggestions from different people along the way.
Well, it was moving so fast that once we really got going, we couldn't really discuss the suggestions, we just did them. And everybody went with it.
So sometimes things feel like a little bit out of your control and you need to go with that flow.
I am equally transparent.
I love that.
That is my approach to life. Oh, those are the rules?
Yeah, so what's the fastest way we can improve teaching and learning? Is there a hack to this? Can we figure out a trick? Absolutely. Okay. But what happened? What did you discover?
Wouldn't let me. Despite the fact that the way you framed it, I should have been able to walk over and drop the ball in. You would not allow me, so I went back. We experimented a little bit, came up with suggestions.
I think we were kind of stuck when we first started talking, and we were just stuck in like talking about it. But then once we started experimenting and experiencing it, we had more ideas once we tried it out.
I noticed within this group, you came up with a different solution as far as making it through this pathway. Can you describe that for the other group? What happened there? What happened the first time you tried and you needed to make an adjustment?
We realized we didn't have enough room to go around each other, so we had to create. And then I felt really terrible because our group did great, and then I was the last one to get in the bucket. So I learned that I don't want to be. I feel bad. Everyone.
But you made that adjustment and everybody ended up on the same side. Did that create enough space for you?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was better.
Was that a problem that you foresaw at the beginning? That's something that you discovered along the way that you needed to adjust. What was similar about this activity and your own pathway for improving teaching and learning?
A lot of learning on the fly.
Yes.
A lot of trying something out and, maybe that wasn't the best thing to try. And I think that responding to the feedback, and here is pretty straightforward feedback you get.
Drop the ball.
And then that's feedback. In the classroom, you have to be aware of the feedback, and you have to monitor that to make sure that you're working towards the goal.
So be aware of the feedback, be receptive to the feedback, and be ready to make changes based on that.
Be nimble in the classroom. Be nimble.
It's also not a one-sided thing. You're responding to each other in the situation around you. It's not, we were not the only actor.
And every once in a while, if you have to jump on top of the table to get points across.
With grace, I
That was lovely. I think that was on video, maybe?
You're going to cancel our insurance.
Video static, you're safe.
Anyone else? Similarities with your own pathway towards improving teaching and learning?
Another one that might be relevant is, at least with the first ball, it was actually just a tiny bit too large with some pieces in the pipe. So there was places where you got stuck, which is something that's going to happen.
And with each time you do it, you had the experience of the last time to know what worked, what didn't, and what tweaks you needed to make in order to get a little bit further along.
Great, so you encountered some difficulties and you figured out how to overcome those. Has anybody experienced a difficulty within their pathway towards improving teaching and learning that they're willing to share how they overcame
students, and I could very easily communicate with them about things that we had in common. As I got older, as we all do, you realize that you're out of touch with what the students sort of world is like. And so it's caused me to sort of adapt my examples and adapt my presentation to meet the needs of the students now and not be stuck in what used to work. The Seinfeld references, as clever as they are, do not work anymore in class. And so you have to adapt. And so I've constantly adapted what I do in class. And in psychology, the other thing is, it used to be that you could do activities that were allowed with the internet. Now everybody knows not activities, so you have to change those things as well. So it's a constantly evolving process. I'm going to get a pencil.
So I hope that this activity can serve as a metaphor, an example for you, both in terms of continuing to improve your teaching and learning, but also as a framework for experiential learning. You had a pathway that you created from your current status to improving teaching and learning. That pathway wasn't straight. It wasn't clear from the start. You didn't know exactly what you needed to do. You needed to make a plan. You had to make adjustments along the way. You kept the ultimate goal in mind. That was a key piece. You're always focused on where do we need to end up. Same thing as far as teaching and learning. The focus on student learning outcomes. As far as experiential learning, you participated in an activity. You were engaged. We did a short amount of reflection, where you were putting things together and you're thinking about how did this activity apply to other settings or future activities. And these are the key components as far as experiential. We'll take care. These in here now. I enjoyed it a long way. Hang on to this.
So moving right along, one of the things in the show that you talked about was having that end goal, that learning outcome in mind. And that's extremely important. What I wanted to talk about were two things that I'm not sure if I got them right just yet, but there are two things that issues that I always have to deal with when I'm thinking about experiential learning opportunities. One of them is how do I select groups, or how do I get individuals in groups? And the other one is how do I grade my students? So those are two things that I constantly struggling. I can't tell you I got the exact solution or anything like that, but I can tell you a little about what I've done and what seems to be working for me or where I am in my progression. So first things, when I'm thinking about the groups, one of the first questions that I have is, what size should my teams be? Now, when I think about size with my teams, I think about it in two different ways. I think about team sizes as either an end or a means. When it's an end in itself, I think about the actual activity and how many people I need for the activity, or even if it matters at all. Right, so an activity like we just did right now, that you want to have a certain amount of individuals, but that in itself is an end. Now, when I think about it as a means, I think about how do I get smaller portions of individuals so that then I can build up into larger teams. So one of the things I like to do is, for example, I spent the first couple of weeks of my classes, is I like to, I do a number of different pairs. Now the idea behind the pairings isn't because that is an end in itself. It's because I'm trying to pair up different students to see which students work best in what scenarios, and different scenarios that I'm doing that. The reason is because when I finally put them in my big group, which is composed of about 4 or 5 individuals, the stakes are much higher. Right? Now, so that's why it's really important for me to test out and to see which students before I actually place them into different groups. Now, when I place students into groups, there are 2 basic options. Either you can have the students select their own groups, and a lot of them tried that. So, but what happens when you have students select their groups?
They pick their friends.
They pick their friends, okay? Or they go like this. Who's around me? Okay? Now, if if the outcome isn't, thinking about the outcome, how is that going to get you to what you want to get to? So for example, one of the activities, one programs that I have my students do, or one exercise that I have my students do, is they do a program, they develop a program, and then they implement it at East Campus as part of Spring Explorers. So what benefit would it be if I just have perhaps maybe a super group of students that would have a ton of experience with maybe with Camp Mass or other things and East Campus, and some groups that have no experience. Right? It doesn't really help anybody. Right? It doesn't help us to get to where we need to get to. So those are a couple of things. So having them, either you have super groups, you have individuals that don't necessarily get along, it's really random. But when the stakes are so high, when I'm talking about group projects that are perhaps maybe 20 to 40% of a student's grade, the stakes are way too high for this randomness. So I tend to recommend using you being the one that actually selects them. Now, when I select students, I don't just go randomly and just select them either. On the first day of class, for example, I have filled out a sheet that tells me a little bit about themselves. Now, when I ask the questions, they're very specific to the learning outcomes that I want to achieve in my projects, and also different variables that I know are going to impact the actual projects themselves. So, for example, I might ask them, how much experience do you have with programming? No experience to an extensive amount of experience. Now, when I ask them, I actually use either a 2-point or a 4-point Likert type scale, so to speak. Now, the reason I do that is because I ultimately am going to put individuals into either 2 groups or 4 groups. So by having these questions, I can naturally get these types of groups. So I'm asked right from the beginning, I'm getting these type of information, these type of data from them. Okay? So that's one way. Now, other types of questions, individuals might group people by personality traits. Some individuals might be more extrinsic, intrinsic individuals. So you want to be, that might help out for some individuals, some groups, that might be positive. I might do it by interest areas. So for example, maybe some individuals, especially for the event management class, students were developing their own events, and I wanted to group students by interest areas. So did they like sports versus being in the theater? Like things that you might actually be able to help group you in the future. So those are some of the things that I do. Again, I use pairs to test out. I test out to see who are my leaders in class. I test out to see who actually works best with whom. And so I do this, and also to get them to know each other and start building a rapport with each other. That is going to be really important as well when you have this huge project online as well. Other things, when I finally get the group that I think is going to be the right teams, again, I put them eventually into 4 teams for big projects. When I get them, I challenge them. Before I tell them that's their actual teams, I give them a series of challenges. And I want to see how they step up and how they work within each group. Right? If they can be successful there, then I can tell them, hey, by the way, this is your actual team. And then let's move forward, we'll go here from there. So if not, then I tweak and I do different things. Now, when I'm actually selecting teams for different projects, again, it depends what your outcome is. You can do it either randomly or systematically. Randomly, you can do, like you said, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. That works okay in some scenarios. Right, where you just want a heterogeneous group of individuals and there aren't any specific variables that are important, like a level of experience or anything like that. Other things I like to do is I like to combine them with other activities. So for example, in my programming class, I have a certain number of icebreakers because icebreakers are important things for programmers to learn. So I'll have them do the icebreaker that most of us know where you get into a line based on age without actually having to say anything. So you use alternative forms of communication, and as a leader, you're actually sitting back and seeing who are the leaders within the classroom. What you can do is, especially if you're concerned that perhaps, like for example, my event management class, I have freshmen, sophomores, and seniors. Sometimes I'm worried that the seniors are going to lump them together and the freshmen are going to lump them together. Well, by doing this, I actually can go, okay, now afterwards, I can pair them based on age, because I already have them based on age now. So I had them go through and learn about a programming activity, but then I take the oldest individual with the youngest individual, and then I go from there, and I create teams. So you can use these activities to then create your teams. Earlier today, Dr. Hill talked about another activity called voting with your feet, where he said he would put students he had these 4 different options. And I loved the activity because I thought, okay, I can use the activity for it in itself, but then afterwards, if I have these cohesive, relatively equal equal groups, I can then say, okay, look, I can take individuals from each group and then pair them as actual teams for different types of activities where I need different points of view on a specific topic. So the idea is of being very creative when you're putting these groups together. Once you have your actual teams, you can be very creative within themselves too. So again, once I have my teams, I can give them different roles. I can say this a leadership role, a note taker role, whatever it is. After I have these roles within themselves, I can switch them because every person should have a chance to be a leader. Every person should have a chance to have other type of activities. But then I also can say, okay, today I'm going to form teams from all the leaders, and I'm going to want, or today I'm going to want all the people who are note takers. You're going to be forming a team. So these are just creative ways of forming teams for different types of activities, and it helps to engage the classroom. And it helps to prevent against the same thing, which is where you ask students, hey, get into teams, and then they get into the exact same teams every single time. Okay? So these are some of the things. Now, when it comes to grading, it's really important that they understand the importance of this. So experiential learning is in my syllabus. So students, I'm very upfront about it. I incorporate it into different types of grading schemes. One of them is what I call my engagement points, so to speak. And this allows me to enough flexibility so that I don't have to grade every single activity, every single engagement that they do, per se. So because you don't have to grade everything. And that was something that was important for me to learn too. You don't have to grade everything. So I do that, and then when it comes to my big projects, there are a couple ways of doing it. You can tell students, hey, guess what? In the real world, you're all getting the same grade. You all get the same grade in this project. That's one strategy. You can do a whole different strategy, which is, you know what? I'm not going to really look at the big picture. I'm grading every student individually. Right? And there's some scenarios where that's important to do. I like to do a combination where I grade the entire project, so for example, an event on how they actually implemented it. And then I also allow them to have individual voices within that, where they grade themselves as well as other individuals. Now, this is important because especially if you're using these assignments, for example, for accreditation, where you have to actually have individual assessments for different people, and you can't do it if you have just a group grade. So if you do this, you can actually have that individual perspective in there as well. So that's a little bit about how I do some of my grading, how I do a little about selecting the groups. So I hope that was helpful.
Working independently, you know, as we prepared this, there's really some overlap, I think, the things I've discovered just listening to Ariel in the activity that you're about to do. Here's a disclaimer. Here's a disclaimer. So this started, because this thing took a life of its own, and it started in fall of 2011. That was before the 2012 presidential campaign, the 2012. This whole thing is based on the original Apprentice television show. This whole methodology I came up with one day when I left 30 years of coaching, most of that in Springfield, and I was teaching undergrad at PE, and I took over our athletic admin grad program. One of the courses I was given is our athletic facility design, operations, and maintenance class. And going back to the early part of my career, I was a college athletic director at Roger Williams University before I was 30. So I had an interesting career path. I got to my goal to teach and coach at Springfield, but I was an administrator very young. Very, very young. Opportunities came, and the two biggest things probably that I learned were all about facilities, because I was hired in part with 1 year to open a brand new first ever on-campus athletic facility at Roger Williams. So I had to create, you know, kind of spearhead the creation and implementation of every policy that didn't exist to make something that wasn't there yet operate. And I was going to be the scheduler 24/7, 365 days a year, internal, external use, with 2 pedagogy degrees. But they said, you're from Springfield, so you can do anything, right? And I wasn't saying no to the opportunity. And on my way out the door, which relates to our activity, and I won't say too much about it, but we did not have an athletic, outdoor athletic complex for our spring sports. So everything was off campus, and that was a nightmare in Bristol, Rhode Island. If you're from Rhode Island, you figure that out. okay? So in any case, when I got this job, I said, I gotta do something cool with and different with the facility class, and so we gotta do projects, we gotta do real projects. We gotta find a way to have the students experience with professionals in the field, stuff that's going on at a school, and let's get on board with that. So I'm just sitting there thinking. And I love the original Apprentice show before the celebrity part. I liked how they got the week projects and how the leadership worked. And I was intrigued by that. And I said, I'm going to build something. So you're going to participate in the first part. I need the two groups to stand up, reassemble. You're probably going to get some trades going here. But if you would reassemble, now MK is actually going to be in my course this fall, so I have to be careful about this. I don't want to give too much of a preview, so I've already decided she's up here right now. Come on, MK. Coach Stoloff, you're up here too. What role do you think they're going in? If you ever watched The Apprentice. They're not going to be on the project team, and I'm the D. I'm the D. Who are they?
Judges.
The eyes and ears. So I have an eyes and ears for each group. Now, raise your hand if you ever played a softball or baseball game in a uniform with umpires and a scoreboard at any age of your life. Raise your hand and hold it there. All right, so we're pretty even there in terms of baseball, softball. All right, we've got 4. We've got 5. That will actually work as long as you don't mind them having, one more person to have some input, okay? So, you're gonna get a piece of paper and eyes and ears. Coach, you're gonna be observing, you can't say a word. But you're gonna be asked the first questions when they're done. You got that group, you got that group, and you're just gonna observe how they operate. You're gonna be handed a piece of paper, the case study's on the top, I'm gonna give you a comment about it before we get started, and you're gonna have 3 tasks and 1 final question, and you've got to turn this in to your eyes and ears. I'm going to say in 6 minutes. When I say go, you're going to get 6 minutes to accomplish this piece of paper. Who's ever been in a town where a brand new high school was built on the same site as the old high school? Beautiful. So we have some experience. So again, equal experience. Have you seen it where the new high school was built right next to the old high school? Right on the athletic fields. And then when it's done and they tear down the old building, they build the new athletic fields. That's essentially the scenario. This is what's happening in this town. But they're going from an outdoor track, a field that took care of their girls and boys soccer and lacrosse, their football and field hockey, a grass field. So they had a track, they had a grass field, they had a baseball field, and they had a softball field. Now in this change, they're losing a little land. We're not going to get into why. And the modification is the space for softball and baseball is going to be shared. And the only things you have to worry about is this. The only design issue related to this dilemma is that the 2 infields will be separate. So it's not going to be where you have the softball and baseball infield sharing that space. You're going to put these in different parts of this space. Okay, that's one. And it's going to create an operational issue because now all of your JV and varsity boys and girls baseball and softball for home games all have to be at a different time. And the outfields are going to overlap. So even for daily practice. So I know you're not all experts on athletic facilities. That's not so much the point of the activity you're about to get. But that's your case study. You have a paragraph at the top. I'm going to put this one here. You have a paragraph at the top. You have tasks. You got 6 minutes. Go.
Done.
Hand it to your eyes and ears.
Ooh, eyes and ears.
Come on up front, eyes and ears.
Sure.
15 seconds. Come on up. Thank you. All right, here we go. Ready?
Let's start with more creative items.
Eyes and ears. Coach Stoloff. Announce the name of the team.
The name of the team, Solution.
Did they follow the directions? Yes. Now say the name of the team.
Milagro?
Did they follow directions?
Yes.
Yes. Who's the project manager?
Chris.
In your opinion, Coach, what's the number one reason Chris is the project manager?
Because of his expertise.
Okay. Describe his leadership style during those 6 minutes. Now, hey, listen. I'm in character. This is our classroom right now. This is a student, right? Because I don't have a clue what's going on because I didn't hear anything. So I have to learn from the eyes and ears. And they're debriefing on what they observed up there. Collaborative. Now, who was your project manager?
David.
David. Number one reason David was selected.
He was holding the pen.
And describe his leadership style.
And I tried to write someone else's name down.
Continue to hold the pen and record.
So, stepping out of the character role, what's happened in the classroom? Like, they're like, what's going on? And it's just the shtick begins, right? It's fun. But we've created, and like Ariel, these teams may not stay together. Usually they do, but they may switch because we have a whole lot of things ahead before we finalize them. The eyes and ears may be trying out today, depending on the numbers in class, or they may have opted in. I may have said, hey, would anybody like to be the eyes and ears? Whatever, right? So there's a lot going on already. Okay, and the answer to the last question, read the last question they were asked, if you would, okay.
Use one word to answer this question. What is your project team's #1 priority as you begin your planning for this facility?
Answer?
Collaboration.
Answer?
Equity.
Okay, pretty good athletic background, senior wall. Many, many years coaching and doing a lot in athletics. Clearly, a lot of athletic background, pretty strong athletic background, and I think around the room probably athletes. Athletic administration. This is what these students are going forward in. What does that word need to be? Anybody in the world of sports, what does that word need to be? We're designing a facility for athletic use. Safety. Right? But a learning moment. So these are the students, and then most of them are athletes. Most of them aren't going to say safety. So you let the process is teaching, right? The wrong answer, there's nothing wrong with those answers. Those answers are fine. But we want them walking out the door, ask that question at the end, safety. What's in the best interest of the student athletes? That's the motto of athletic administrators, high school and college level, if they're doing their job. Right? Make sense? Okay, have a seat. I'll show you real quick because we've got 3 minutes. This is, you should not have this much fun teaching, but I will say, and some of you know me way better than others. Some I don't know at all, some know me very well. We all bring us to what we do. But there might only be one in here that would like to do something like this, then you would want to spend a whole lot more time with me individually or come to class. And I know that in a 20-minute presentation. But let me try to give you a feel for this, where we are now, 7 years into this, and this is 7 different partnerships in the community. This is service learning. We were at Simsbury High School last fall with Jeff Pinney. He's got approval to build a field house on his high school campus in a separate building, and we were part of the beginning of the planning. We supplemented what was going on with building committees. He said, yeah, I'll let you in on what we're doing, and you do some research for me. Which, by the way, would have been a good title for somebody. Right, just researching rules or whatever. So you did the launch. We start the course. I already know who we're going to be working with, so I front load the material they'll need specifically for that project in the semester. It's going to be irrigation, lighting. We might front load information differently because I know where we're going. You did the launch. Then we do the first boardroom where they come in and we do the boardroom. They're all dressed up, we video it, my nameplate says the D, the I's and E's are here, and I just go, I have 9-10 pages of scripted questions. You know how long that takes? And it's just like bang, 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 and they're getting points. Who wins points towards their grade for applicable answers to information we've already covered in class? We do the boardroom. That builds the team, right? Then we do the reveal. My favorite one. They got the bus, didn't know where they were going. During class time, we drove to Ludlow High School, came off the bus. Mr. Tim Brillo was standing on the sidewalk at the appointed time, just like the apprentice. Hey everybody, this is Tim Brillo, Director of Athletics at Ludlow. He's going to introduce you to your project. And I just stood there as he walked them out into the field. And I handed them the assignment for the semester. Now I was working with him all summer on this, right, to build the case study. Then we do the silent phase where they're doing the work. The integrity factor is Coach and MK. And I always talk a lot about the integrity where we do a lot of stuff with integrity as future leaders, right? So they gotta keep it all secret. And there's no advantage to the team sharing because they're all going to get graded at the end, and you'd have to come see me about this assessment model. But it's all ranked assessment. So when you assess your team, you're ranking them 1, 2, 3, 4, and that's for points. In comparison to each other, when your team ranks the other teams, that's for points. This is like real. And when you do the final boardroom, like we do a dry run, and that's really been a good idea because their presentations are much better because they do a dry run with me. And they kind of get the kinks out of it. The final boardroom, my favorite one was Agawam High School mayor, former AD and current AD were in the front of the room. They were the assessors for 20 out of 50 points for their grade. I'm just sitting in the corner collecting paper. All their opinion. Rank these 4 teams 1, 2, 3, 4 on presentation style, content, creativity, whatever. There's real people from that community ranking them. And then I have to have a whole system for how the points go with the ranking. The only students who come to me are the very best students. So nervous about this whole thing. Whoever gets a 3.9 in athletic admin are the 2 or 3 who come to me in the first one. This isn't fair. I mean, what do you mean where are you grading? I'm not grading anything. What do you mean you're not grading anything? I'm just watching it. You're the teacher. I know. This is different. Endure different. Have a different learning experience. And they do just fine. But they're so nervous. They go ballistic. So, enough. Any questions for any of us?
Was that case study in Wilbraham when they were doing?
No, that was actually, I kind of built that on what I had to do. If you go to Google Earth and look at Roger Williams' athletic fields, look at their baseball and softball field. That was my project.
Because Wilbraham did it.
They had to do,
They're in the same field.
Yeah. I kind of built it on something I had to do. And we put the fields opposite. You have to worry about the sun. Is the eye, the sun in the eyes of the bat of the pitcher, 2 different fields. There's so much that goes into it. But, all right, we have general open questions for any of us.
We've got small group discussion first.
Oh, okay.
We want to give you a chance to process and talk about what you do and how you may apply this moving forward. I tried to go around and put the discussion slips there where I thought folks were sitting. So if you can find groups around you, however many people, take a group, 3 or 4 or 5, and go ahead and choose your own adventure with the questions. Start where you want. Discuss which ones are most relevant to you. We've run out of time here. We'd love to field questions individually, maybe on your way out or later. But we hope that we've given you a chance to explore experiential learning and see, hear, and experience small pieces of this teaching and learning tool. We really thank you for your participation because everything hinged upon you in this session. So thank you. Nice job.
Don't forget to fill out the evaluation.